It's 7:32 on February 17th, and I call this meeting of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee together. We have a special meeting, so we'll keep everything moving on the agenda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Somebody just dropped off. Who dropped off? Charles did. We'll get him back. Enough for having the quorum. Okay. I need a motion for the first item on the agenda, which is discuss and take action on a request for an appropriation and bond note authorization of $475,000 for the design relating to access of Great Island. Can I have somebody move
So
it?
move. Second.
Pierre, who seconds? I have Bill. And let me get Charles back in. Okay. There was an adjustment made. Part of this was based upon a conversation that was had with the Board of Finance, with the Board of Selectmen. They revised the verbiage of the bond authorization. I'm going to say this as nicely as I can. If you saw the package, I reviewed their decision matrix, and it's a poor attempt of any decision matrix I've ever used in my entire professional career. I've used, being honest, I've used and taught the Kepner-Trago methodology. I'm not sure that Reed would have won on that. I also don't understand how price for it is number 4 and not number 2 on their objectives, but what the hey. They really didn't need to go out on professional development to select someone. So if they wanted Reed, Reed was going to be it anyway. I still have a problem. I'm going to write to Monica because I don't understand that some of the things that was stressed is that Reed has the best knowledge of the town and what needs to be done. Quite honestly, we're doing the parking lots they've designed already. I don't understand why they are the highest price. That's just blows my mind as no, you shouldn't have been the highest price. You've already done a lot of the work, but that's neither here nor there. This is going to be a bond authorization. This is very similar to the school, so this is the front end of the bond when they come back in May, June timeframe with the final amount. We're just going to amend this bond and add it to it. So if anybody watched the Monday 9th, I believe, Board of Finance meeting, I pressed the Board of Selectmen on what the size of this project was. Apparently, they couldn't give me an answer on Monday, but on Tuesday, when they went to the Board of Finance, we did get a range of $3 to $5 million. I asked them based upon the 400,000 that Reed was asking for, and typically a design is 5% of the overall project. That makes it someplace between $8 to $9 million. And I basically said if you come back with an $8 to $9 million project, that's not being done, since we basically are asking them to widen some roads, put in some parking, and go away. I mean, they're going to put in some infrastructure. The electrical lines are only going to the root cellar, and they're putting in some drainage there. I guess they're doing it for environmental reasons, but there's so much available drainage there that even if it downpoured that island, who's been around for over 100 years, it'll just run off into the ground anyway. So I don't understand why we're putting in drainage. But we'll see that when it comes back. I did ask for having detail on the electric, on the storm, on the roads, on the landscaping that they're doing. and the turnaround. Um, so we're basically asking for detail. We got the detail that we did get because I basically asked Monica what comprises the 617,000. It wasn't in the original RTM package. Wasn't in the Board of Selectmen package either. So we got that. Um, they had a discussion of whether or not this would, if they need any of those expenses. The pre-construction manager we never hire unless we're doing the school. There's no reason for that $100,000 expense. I don't anticipate there will be any lawsuits because we haven't approved anything yet. So what are you suing? Um, the other expenses that are there, if they do come up and it's an emergency, it'll go to the Board of Finance and it won't come out of the Board of Finance operating contingency. This is a capital project, so it'll come out of their capital contingency. Um, Jen and I weren't totally sure how much there was there. We thought about 200,000. There was actually 300 to 400,000 there already. In March, they close out the final accounts, and so anything that is completed and closed gets moved into there. So there's more than enough money to cover anything that's there. That is a circumstance where perhaps something doesn't come back to the RTM, but since I'm expecting the bids back in and it presented to us in a May, June timeframe, all those things will be rolled up into the bond. And so I don't think anything's going to be spent from between now and then that's going to require that to happen. Are there any comments? I wish Charles was here because he and I had a conversation about this. No comments. Okay. I may ask when Charles comes if he's anything he wants to add. The other thing, did anyone else watch the Board of Finance meeting? Okay. So John did commit that there's nothing really going on in Great Island for a while. We'll hold our breath to see. This is anticipated to be completed by September 27th, but it doesn't look like any of the other things that were in the $12 to $14 million project is coming up soon. So with that, are we ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor,
Yes.
raise your hand.
Aye.
8-0, we can go to the next one. Board of Selectmen budget. Does anybody have any comments on the Board of Selectmen budget, having listened to it, watched it? Pierre, you've been at all the meetings with me.
Yeah, there's nothing I would pull out of that budget to flag for discussion. It looks pretty straightforward. I think they've done a good job, as usual, paying attention to detail and trying to keep our costs down.
Yeah, I think that the graph that Jen put together was really good, explaining the ups and the downs.
Mm.
Um, I I think it's a conspiracy. So I don't like to go into conspiracy theories, but this is definitely one for this year. I don't understand why there's nothing to do on the Board of Ed budget or a Board of Selectmen budget during the course of the year. There must be a conspiracy going on here.
Yeah.
That's about my comment on this. I'm sure somebody will get upset with that I said that. But yeah, does anybody, based upon what we've seen, there's not much really to comment on, at least from my end.
No, I would say I would compliment all the department heads or whatever that come and present because they really know their stuff. Like you can see they've put a lot of time and effort into looking at their operations and are very thoughtful. You can watch the presentations and come away really understanding the quality of the people we have in each of these departments. So
Yeah, I'll start passing out over the next week or two. I got something that has me slammed this week. But we'll start coordinating with our Board of Finance and other members so we can get that done as well. Um, Louisa isn't here, but Jeremy was at the uh, PZ&H meeting on Thursday, and I've spoken to several people that were there, and there's really not a lot of change in either the building or the planning and zoning. So that one will go pretty easily. Um, Charles, before we move on, do you want to make comment about anything on Great Island? Well, we actually already voted on it, but we can still add the comment in.
Yes, thanks, Jack, and apologies for being a few minutes late. I'm in New York City in an event. So my take on the Great Island situation was a couple of things. So, I mean, like philosophically, I feel like the Board of Selectmen is obviously, heading in the right place. We wrote a big check to buy this piece of property, so obviously, we need to begin to make it available to our citizens, and arguably, it's been, a little bit delayed in doing that. I mean, personally, I thought there was some lack of transparency as to the first number which came out, the proposal that was written by Monica herself for the 600 and some $1,000 to go to Reed Hildebrandt. I mean, independent of the question as to whether Reed Hildebrandt is the right supplier, which is a whole different conversation. Um, I thought there was, potential lack. Like, I sort of, it was struck to me sitting in the Board of Selectmen meetings, we're talking about how many new walkie-talkies do the firemen need, and do they need the good model or the great model, and do they cost 350 or 500 bucks? I mean, I'm being a bit silly, but I mean, that was sort of the discussion that you had, supported by Jen Chernesky, when you're sitting through the different administrative teams. And then I thought, for a single block amount of 600,000 bucks, the amount of detail behind that was quite lacking, in my opinion. Even if you don't get into the issue of whether it's consulting firm A, B, C, or D, which is the right one. So, I mean, I must admit, and I don't know how the group voted. Um, I felt it was a little bit loosey goosey. And like, well, I understand the desire of the Board of Selectmen to move things forward. I feel that we're not applying the same scrutiny to that. And I do think it was correct that John Zagroski and Jim Palin got involved and said, listen, could we, back out 100,000 bucks or whatever the amount was, and finally got backed out. So I must admit, I'm quite on the fence as to whether I would vote for that or not. My inclination is probably, I would probably vote no, personally spoken, only because I think that we have to have like a consistent standard, which we apply to scrutinizing expenditures of, 500 or $1 million in the town. But that was my, and I will say one more thing is, I do feel like I do kind of question the amount of money in general, because like, if we're gonna, even the reduced amount, remind me, Jack, it was 500,000, I think, after Jay-Z got involved, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's still quite a lot of money, right? So you wouldn't spend $500,000 on a planning and designing effort if you expected the project only to cost a few $1 million. So somehow I feel like, and Jay-Z, I think, did actually reduce the scope and then subsequently commit to sort of a cap of 3 to 5 million of the total expenditure for the early access phase. Um, but arguably, like, if you're going to spend 500 or 600,000 bucks on planning and design, well, then you must be planning a $10 million project, not a $3 million one. So that was my other sort of concern, not only about the quality of detail, but potential scope creep, or what's actually going on behind that number.
Yeah, Charles and I spoke, I guess, Monday, and I had already sent, and I shared with Charles and with Pierre an email that I sent to Monica, John, and Palin, where my concern about Reed Hildebrandt is project creep. That I don't want to. We turned down a 12 to 14 million. We didn't even get a chance because Board of Finance turned it down. A 12 to 14, but I don't want all the elements to come back into this project under the guise that we're finally doing parking. So we will do great scrutiny on that. And I'm going to reopen the voting, Charles, so you can vote no on that. Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
You can count me as a no. Thank you. And
Thank you.
apologize for being
That
late.
way I can give the minority report for the minority.
Of course. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, uh, on some of this, da-da-da, da-da-da. I knew I had an agenda here someplace.
Are we done with the Board of Selectmen approved budget?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
You're now
yeah.
on the
Well,
sump pump ordinance.
yeah, sump pump. So the sump pump is delayed. I showed up at the TGSNA meeting that occurred on Thursday. There was an email that some of us got that the attorney suggested that the RTM only has an up or down on the ordinance. And I challenged the attorney saying that's not the way it is. The analogy I make is that somebody does an analysis and they hand it over to you and say, you have to sign off on this analysis and your name's going to go on it. But you can't look at the analysis and you can't make any changes to the analysis, but it's your name. And at the meeting, I said, if that's what you're coming in with, even though I want the sump pump activity to happen, I'm voting no. And I don't think too many of us would sign off on a document that we ended up having our name on it, but we couldn't read it or make comment on it. And that's what the attorney was presenting. I think it's a challenge to the RTM usurping the authority. The RTM has two authorities. Number one, we handle the pocketbook, and number two, we handle the ordinances. The only exception to ordinances is that we need to get Board of Selectmen approval if we're changing an ordinance as it relates to the budget. That's it. All other ordinances in this town is ours. Now, that is a regulation, but there were so many inconsistencies, such as the original regulations that are in Article 11 says that you have 30 days to correct something. This ordinance says you have 6 months to correct it. And I understood that 6 months, if you tell us that you're doing illegal activity, 30 days if we find that you're doing it. In any event, you have to define the difference. You can't have something dealing with the same issue with two different dates. They also had fines saying one's 250, another thing is 250, all others are 250. That's not true. If you're pumping, if you're discharging illicit activity into the sewer system, Article 11 specifically says, in accordance with state law, that it's $100 a day. So let's at least be a little consistent here. The letter that they're sending out says that they're going to do it biannually, but the regulations they just wrote says they're doing it every 90 days. So, I just that don't give us a train wreck. This is simple legal stuff. I mean, um, I'm I'm a non-attorney, and I picked this up. So by looking at all the ordinances and that, Amy Zavatakis has been wonderful working with us, even though her committee doesn't do it, and David Bain has been great. It's an interesting meeting to go to, but it's tabled to March. Now, the goal is for everybody to get this done because it's approximately 20% of our water that's going. And just so everybody understands, there's two systems. There's the storm drains, which just takes storm water. And then there's the sewer line that takes sewage. And some people, when they set up their sump pumps, actually had the sump pump putting water into the sewer system, and we're paying for that. So we're paying for clean water to be cleaned. And that increases the price to everyone that's using water. The other analysis that they did said the water company in Stamford is processing, let's say, 700 million gallons from Darien. But Aquarium said, by the way, we only sold to the people that are on the sewer system 400 million gallons. So you're processing more water than you sold to us that's coming out of a house. So they've been doing it by taking care of the leaks and going from there. I'm going to be reporting, and we're going to be reporting as a committee when that comes around on the financials. That's a separate fund. It has nothing to do with the taxes. They have their own separate debt. And if you remember, part of the last thing on our budget night is a whole bunch of funds that we cover. Well, this is that. The people that pay into the sewer system are those that are residential, commercial, or businesses. There's a little nuance there. If they put a sewer line into a road, they're going to bond that for 20 years. And even though your house is not hooked up to the sewer line, you are paying your share of the debt to have put that line in. So I found that out in the first house that I lived in here because I had a septic system and was paying in for a sewer line that had been put in 15 years ago. And there was no way I was ever connecting because the sewer line was higher than my basement. So I would have needed a pump to even get into it. So yeah, and the septic kept the grass in the backyard really green. So explain the financials to that. We will vote on the ordinance at the time, depending upon what they have, but our report will solely be to explaining people because there seemed to be some confusion on them. So that covers the sump pump. Any questions on the sump pump? Nope. Good. We can go to the next issue. In the Board of Finances packet of what they met on Tuesday of last week was listing $82 million of debt. Now we have 49 million of a bond anticipation note, which are 1-year notes that we've rolled over twice. After the 2 years, we have to start to pay down principal. And the concept is we will now roll that into 30-year debt. However, we didn't spend all that money and we have the cash because when we did the note, we got back cash. So we have the cash sitting in our general fund. So the decision will probably be made to pay down the 49 million to 47 million and issue debt on that. Problem is we have another 30 or so million dollars of debt that we could bond real quick. I mean, the Pear Tree Point for $9 million is going to be completed by Memorial Day, April or May. Mm-hmm. So we shouldn't be carrying $9 million out of our general fund. We don't have that much money to keep on loaning out to projects and waiting for bonds to be issued. Problem is that Great Island's a 30-year debt. Everything else we do is 20 years. And based upon the discussions that I've heard, and, you know, I'm far from an expert in bonds, the fact of the matter is that it gets a little confusing, and there are ways that you can sort of merge a 20-year debt with a 30-year debt, but it doesn't, it confuses the marketplace. So we might be issuing as much as another 40 or $50 million in bond anticipation notes. Definitely there's two projects, the Hanson Road and the Rings End Bridge, where we're expecting to get money back. So we would ban that. The money from Hanson Road is supposed to come back from the state. The money from Rings End Bridge is supposed to come back from FEMA. The FanDuel line on us getting that money is, sorry, I don't give a high priority that we may see the $1 million that we're committed to get based upon the current situation of FEMA. But if that happens, we'll bond the whole thing. Doesn't really matter. So they're going to have conversations on that. Again, they're looking for level debt. I'm not for level debt. And I think that we'll have a conversation about that and make our decision known to the Board of Finance. We have apologies, my flight is now. Okay, bye, Charles. We're not voting on anything, so that's fine. The level debt is not the right thing because what we're doing is we're doing interest only for the first 2 years of a 20-year bond, which is kicking the can down the road because it means in year 3 through 20, we're paying off the principal, which is then a higher payment. In addition, we're paying more interest because we didn't pay down the principal in year 1 or year 2. But in my opinion, it actually is worth because we're rolling bands on this stuff, which is 1-year notes, and some of these are going for 2 years. So we're actually doing 3 years of interest only on this stuff. And, level debt is good if you're managing to a mill rate. Paying off your debt is good for long-term financial planning. And so the question is, are we doing long-term financial planning or are we managing to a mill rate? And last year at the budget, I said expect 4 to 5% increases in the mill rate. And nobody else said that until John said it. Zagroski said it in October. I had told him prior to saying that statement that I was going to say that, and he didn't argue with me. And that's before, we can't do level debt anymore. We have another, 82 million coming on. We have a school for $50 to $90 million that we have to do. We have Saltbox Lane, which is a flood mitigation that's probably around $6 million. We have a lot of debt that's coming on. And so you're not going to get it level because we don't have the same amount coming off. When we had $100 million and we were trying to, what we put on was equal to what we were taking off, we could do level debt. We're ending up adding tens of millions of dollars. And so the concept of level debt, even though I'm not a big fan of it to begin with, makes absolutely no sense. Now, that is the Board of Finance's prerogative and their purview, and we don't get to determine the tone, but I do believe there's a couple members of the Board of Finance who concur with what we're saying. That's the only thing I want to say to that. You can listen to their conversation. Josh did a whole discussion on 20-year and 30-year debt. I'm going to sit down in his office and ask him to give the version, 20-year, 30-year debt for dummies. Because I wasn't following everything he was saying. So we'll go through that.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I state this back so that it's clear and I'm following. The problem with level debt as you're talking about it is that we're incurring, as a town, much higher interest expense by deferring any kind of principal payment. And that higher cost is the price tag of this level debt concept, where you're suggesting that in reality, the town should be making sure that its mill rate can fund early principal repayment, pay back the debt earlier, and save all that interest expense.
That's correct. And most towns don't do more than 1 year.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and I meant to hand this out, at the end of every January 31st, Tony Hemicki files what the grand list is for the town of Darien. And the grand list is up 1.5%, which is rather substantial on an $11 billion grand list.
Mhm.
This is the perfect year to start paying off this debt, because if you keep the way I always look at it and a reconciliation that I do, if you add the incremental grand list and tax and apply the mill rate that we have in this current year, that generates probably $2 to $3 million of incremental tax revenue to the town. All right. Without doing anything, we end up with that because this is a large increase.
Mm.
So since we have $2 to $3 million coming in more, this is the year where you can do it because you have the revenue to offset the incremental cost of paying off the debt.
Right.
So that's just one philosophy. But yes, you articulated it well, Per. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, if somebody's watching this and doesn't speak finance, I just wanted to try to explain it in plain language. Okay.
Let's see. Any other comments on the Board of Ed? Seeing none, we'll go to the next area. As I said, this is a special meeting, so I had to put everything down just in case we wanted to talk about it. To Pierre's point, I did not put down what's going on with what rules decided on the John Zagroski project
Yeah.
on that. And since it's not on the list, I can't tell you that we've decided that districts will be being the starting point. They're supposed to meet, come up with ideas by the end of March, submitted to TGS&A by the end of April, and TGS&A will present it to the RTM and John in June. We will also be doing that as well, but I can't tell you that because it's not on our agenda. Next. It's sort of manipulating Robert's rules. And I'll just tell Mike not to put that down. High level, what typically in February, I do a high level report on the 6 months period for what the Board of Ed has spent and what the town has spent and what it's looking like going forward. And I constantly will, John, one of the things that I suggest you start to take a look at is go to the Board of Finance meeting, and they have a packet there.
Mm-hmm.
And just click on the blue button that they say that says financials.
Yep.
It lists absolutely everything that's going on in this town. What are the expenses? They don't have the Board of Ed, but we get that from the Board of Ed monthly. But it talks about every bond issue, where it is. It talks about the ARPA funds. It talks about other funds that are out there. So it's one of my monthly readings that I do, which keeps me informed of what's going on and allows me to ask questions. It's a couple pages and everything. They do some really cool things. So on the Board of Selectmen side, let's say they have the police department. They go, after 6 months over the last 5 years, we've spent 62% of their expenditures. Oh, we've only spent 50% of the expenditures this year, or vice versa. So then they explain that. Now, to go and do that for 60 months, to have it carry forward and go forward, I'm glad that I'm not doing that report.
And they put that up every month?
Every month. It's part of, if you go to the Board of Finance, and then they go to the agenda.
Right.
And then what they have, which is better than the Board of Ed, for their agenda numbers, if it has a blue number there and you click on the blue number, it'll bring you to the resolution or the documentation or the request. So it brings you right there.
That's nice.
So look at the financials, click on that, and then it'll bring you to that report. And it has things like what we spent on Great Island, what we did on ARPA, what we've done on everything else, what the financials are, what the revenues are, what the tax collection is. Um, and I mean, you might need a magnifying glass, and if you don't wear glasses, you will after reading the report. It's not large print, but it's really comprehensive, and it's a good read for everything
Okay.
that's going on.
That is really good to know. I was looking for something like that. So thank you.
Okay. Um, I'm going to give a report on where we are in the 6 months. I always check this with Jen and Josh to make sure that I'm interpreting everything right, because I also believe we need to follow up on not just approving the budget, but track where we are. That's part of what we should be doing anyway, is tracking where they are on things and what's coming up that we didn't know about. Josh goes over it every month also at the meeting, but you can pretty much read it from what's going on there. Then on the, I'll do the same for the Board of Ed. I'll listen to their 6-month report, which Rich Root will do. I do have his package, and we'll go from there. We were asked to discuss ARPA. We got $4.6 million from the federal government during the COVID crisis. We had to commit to what we were going to spend it by December 31st, 2024. We had to spend it by 2026, December 31st. Once we made the commitment on at the end of 2024, we could not move things around. And anything we do not spend by 26, we have to give back to the federal government. Right now, the only thing that we're giving back is we were off on a $300,000 project by $1.36. So right now, that's our committed amount to go back to the Fed. I was speaking to Jen about it and said, I know you did a good job that right now we only have $1.36, but if you recall, I said I didn't want to give a penny back. So, and then she just laughed at me. But yeah, they did a good job. There's some more things that are outstanding. Most of them are sitting with Ed Gentile in Public Works. And part of what happened was really hard to get some estimates, in the last days, because we had to have a firm document that says, here's the estimate for this. So some people might have been a little bit high. I think at the end of the day, we may be about a couple $100 more. But even if we're about 1,000, it said we spent 4.6 million over probably 150 different projects of various sizes and other things. So overall, they really did a lot of good job. And there was a lot of swappings going on. Myself and several others were on the ARPA advisory committee that lasted a short period of time until John got tired. We also have a fee. Sure. Once we set up the original thing, there was no reason to have the advisory committee around anymore. It was solely under the control of the Board of Selectmen, and they knew what they were doing. So it was just another meeting to say hi to. And they did do a good job on it. John, Kate, and Jen really did an excellent job of putting this together. FEMA fund. Back in one of the storms, it may have been Ida, we set up a fund for $110,000 to help people apply to FEMA to either raise their house or to have their house purchased. We had 12 initial inquiries about this, and we were going to help fund them to get this because it's an expensive process. And Connecticut has a sort of strange law. The law is you don't have to disclose. I mean, funny, you have to disclose if you have a sump pump, but you don't have to disclose that your house has been flooded 7 times and you've collected money from FEMA. I mean, sorry. So, and it's all confidential information. So you can't even go to FEMA and say, oh, did this house property that I'm buying in a flood zone ever flood? So it's one of those strange laws. So anyway, 4 people applied. One of the groups dropped out. Another one was approved, and I don't recall if it was for purchase or lifting. I think it may have been for purchase. And then they decided they didn't want to sell the house, maybe because they looked at what every other house is selling for right now. I don't know the reasons. We don't disclose the property. It's all confidential. There's 2 others who are still on the waiting list to have their FEMA help raise their homes, which then make it compliant. And so that's the status on that. We put in 110,000. There's about 21,000 still left. There was a request to add to the funding, and the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator decided not to. So that's the other report we'll get. Other than that, there are 2 outstanding minutes. One for the 4th, one for, I have it written. We somehow missed a couple of minutes being submitted. So we did November 18th, which was the DEA union contract. And we have on the 4th, we have that done. We'll have minutes for tonight, September 15th and June 5th coming down the road to do it. So I'll take a motion for both of them. Who wants to move it? I'll take Peter D. And I'll take Beth since you came on from Colorado. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bobby, we already discussed briefly the sump pump, and since it's deferred, we're not getting into the detail on it. But anyhow, this committee is mostly going to be dealing with the financials of the sump pump, because most of the people, a couple of us have been talking, and we have to get to Jeff Kraus for the Public Works, because we think there's some definitions that need to be done, such as what is the storm drain network? What is the sewer network? Not in the regulations of the ordinance. We just needed to explain to the RTM so people understand what the differences are.
Okay.
I think that the graph that Susan Cameron did that was showing what the water company processed versus what Aquarian showed to us is very good. I'm already aware of some of the I&I that that Ed's been doing over the years to try and get the seepage out of our system, so we can talk on that. But we're basically going to be explaining and ours that this is a separate fund. People didn't realize that everything we're talking about is really only for those who have some connection to the sewer system. Now, as I said, there's a little nuance, is that if we put a sewer system into your road and we did 20-year debt on it, and whether or not you're hooked up or not, you're still paying your share of that debt. So you may not be part of the system, so you may not be a connector, but you're still considered to be, you still get an October 1st bill. So, and I'm going to go through how they calculate. I mean, I know it. I got a quick thing you saw from Ed, but I kind of mostly knew it. And I look with the sewer. We have a slightly different opinion on the $2,013,000 that they have in their reserve account. The way that I believe, having conversations with others, is that once they decide what they want to do for the financial aid, and I don't want, unlike the blight where they have financial aid within the ordinance, I don't want that. I think that's off to the side, that they can decide on their own. They don't need to put it in. They just need to do it. That's their jurisdiction and purview. All right.
Okay. Understood.
What What I do believe, and I tried to say, talk to Reese as we were leaving,
Mhm.
the RTM, because of the little old lady that somebody has as a neighbor,
Mhm.
they need to come back and say, not that we're working on something. They need to come back with something and say, this is what we're starting with. Okay. Now, it's been discussed by the commission, and they could simply take what's done at the blight ordinance, which is anybody who's getting financial assistance at the tax office is a starting point. And then if they're not listed there and there's other need, Ali, on the director of human services, can make a decision for them on that. All right. And just come back and say, this is our starting point. You don't have to say how much you're putting in. You don't need to put in a cap. You don't even need to do anything. You just need to say, this is where we're starting. The goal is to get this through the RTM, not to have somebody come back and say, oh, you didn't give us financials when you're going to come up with it 2 months from now. Give us a starting point. They want to change that starting point 2 minutes after they tell us, I don't care. All right. So if you can advise them on that,
Mhm.
again, I'm trying to legislatively get this through.
Mhm.
All right.
Yes.
The other thing is we don't give out loans. All right. The town doesn't.
Mhm.
But what the town can do, and I verified, I'm not telling who I verified it with, but somebody in town who is an employee and I sat down and figured out that we can easily put a loan on, and put a lien on a house. You know, if we're giving financial aid, we can do a lien. And when the house is sold, we'll collect. And the way you fund that is we can easily do a transfer from their 2 million into their operating account. They would have to request it, but we would then make the transfer into their operating account. And I'm just coming up with a number, all right?
Mhm.
But they could do $50,000 to $100,000, and that way in their operating fund they have that amount to go and do this. All
Mhm.
right. And that's pretty common in what goes on. Somebody informed me recently that the turnover in houses in Darien, unlike me who's lived here forever, is typically like 10 years, 10, 15 years, people are turning over.
Mhm.
So, and I don't mean to, being that I'm of that age where I could qualify for being old, um, you know, those who are in their 70s and 80s, the turnover is probably quicker than giving it to it's two people in their 20s who are
Right.
first having kids. So, not that that should be a criteria, but
Right.
most of the people who are on low income are probably of senior age. All right, since I don't
Yes.
see who they are, but I know that, and there's not a lot of them really. Um, so that's where we are on that. I know that you handed something to, what you call it, to David, a new
Mhm.
ordinance and and resolutions. He hasn't been able to distribute it. He was on a plane to Florida. He'll be down there for business this week.
Mhm.
So if you can send it to me, I'd appreciate
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. I was collecting information from you and PHNS tonight. I will send that all out by tomorrow morning to you and the other committee chairs.
My yeah, how to put it. What I did, and I told this to the committee,
Mhm.
it was 9 degrees outside. I like going to beaches, not the mountains when it's snowing.
Mhm.
So I wasn't going outside anyway. So I put Article 13, Article 11, the blight ordinance, the letters, their articles, and other things that they had, all the forms, and started doing some comparison. So
Mhm.
that's when we came up with some inconsistencies. That's what David Amy Zavatakis and I were all talking about. The fact that they want to fine, don't care. The fact of how they want to do the ordinance, those are their regs, don't care. But we can't have regs in 11 and 13 on the same subject being different. All right. And so, example that I mentioned afterwards, or you might have been there. 11 says that if you're notified that you're in illicit discharge, you have 30 days to correct, with knowledge that they'll modify it if you're going to work with them. All right. The Reg 13 says you have 6 months. Now, the interpretation from Ed is if you voluntarily tell us we're going to giving you 6 months to deal with it, if we find it, we're giving you 30 days. That's great interpretation, but that's not what the regs say. So clean up your regs, and you can change it from 6 months to 4 months to 3 months at any time. Don't care what the months are. Just have it consistent. Article 11 says warning is a written note or a hand-delivered notice by either the superintendent or the director of human services. This is sort of interpreting that the letter is your notice. And so we're not sure how that is. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I promise you, I've been involved with enough things that I know how to read Connecticut law. So as well as town law. So that's, or I even made a simple thing. The regs say that the authority can issue new things every 90 days. All right. However, in their letter, they say they're doing it biannually. So if you have somebody who's not doing something well and the commission decides after the 6 months they're going to issue one 90 days after that, we've just confused the person who says, wait, you only said you're doing this twice a year. The reg said you can do it 90. So I said on the letter, say either that the authority can do it either 90 days or biannually. That's all I'm asking for. Just some clarity here. Do you hear what I'm saying? That's not changing the regulations. I'm saying apply your regulations. The other one that I took a little bit of umbrage with, the fine for illicit discharge is already in Article 11, and it's pretty clear. All right. But and it's in Article 11, Section 10, penalties and enforcement.
Yes.
When we go to 1013.9, the first version says here's 250 for not returning the form. All right. There was another 250 that was subsequently changed to say all other violations. Now, initially, the reason why I made a comment that you had to make a change on there is because it also says in either 1013.5 or 6, I forget which one, that if there's a request for something by that, you have to return it in 14 days or you can get fined. All right. Again, don't care, that full their purview on what they want to do. However, they never stated what that fine was. So I suggested that you put that if you don't return information or requests, that it's 250. However, since you're also talking about illicit discharge in this thing, that fine isn't $250. That, I said, that fine is referenced in Article 11, Section 10, and just put that in the fine area. You don't have to redefine it. Just put it and reference it back to 11. So because it's not a $250 fine, it's up to a maximum of $100. So those were my type of comments, and I think David's type of comments that we're doing. If they're looking for clarity, I'm not. That's the clarity I'm looking for.
Understood.
So I fully understand what their purview is, but I also understand what the RTM's purview is. All right. So, and I kind of treat the charter as my U.S. Constitution. And I don't like violating either.
Understood.
So, so that gives us a wrap up on that. Does that sort of tell you what it is that we're dealing with? Yeah, I mean, I understand what they're trying to do. And speaking
Mhm.
of Reese, should be no tension between the commission and the RTM. What we're looking to do is work together, get a couple of things cleaned up, bring us back, make some of those changes, Bobby, just so we feel good. All right. I
Of
mean,
course.
and you know, if they can come through with that, I'll speak to Craig offline,
Mhm.
and say, give us this. You guys have been talking about this. You know, just come
Yes.
with something in March so we can vote on this because I am on the sewer line. I don't like paying to the government more than I have to.
Mhm.
So, and I don't like supporting people who are doing illegal stuff. So, you know, and so I think it's a quick win if we can just get those things fixed. So I'm hopeful that you can advise them on that.
Yes. Yep. That's what I came here for. So thank you,
Okay.
Jack. I appreciate that.
All
Yes.
right. Thanks a lot, Bobby. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.
You
It
too.
is now sometime. It's 8:29. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Mike, I'm going to take you, even though you look like you're getting ready to raise your hand. And I'll take Charles T. All in favor? We're done at 8:29.